how we sabotage our own discipline. Especially when I was in teaching as a counselor in elementary school. Parents would come to me, teachers would come to me and say, what can I do with this child? And we would come up with some ideas. They'd go back and try it, and they'd come back and say, that didn't work at all. Nothing works with that kid. I've tried everything with that kid. Nothing works. And it began to dawn on me. I could sort of see what was happening when I'd watch them with the child, and it dawned on me, they're sabotaging perfectly good kinds of discipline that they're doing just naturally. You know, we all know good kinds of consequences, things to do with our kids. What's happening is they're sabotaging themselves. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. It's a very interesting topic. Now this time we're going to expand, and we're going to go on and spend some time on the 4 self-sabotages. And we'll just start and go down the list. The first one, and this is a tough one for C parenting personalities. The first one is procrastination. Procrastination, we just put it off. We see the child misbehaving, but we really don't like to interfere. We don't know if we really should interfere. And actually, A parenting personalities too don't know what to do. I mean, we don't know what to do. What are we going to do? Maybe if I just ignore it, they'll quit. Have you ever had that feeling? As a C, I'm a C parenting personality. When I was young with 4 little kids, I did that a lot because I thought, well, now they're nice little kids, and I'm sure they'll quit. They won't continue this. They'll stop. Well, that didn't always happen, of course. And what happens and why this any of these self-sabotages, why they make negative behavior increase, is because they tend to tear down the child's staircase of needs. Remember Maslow's staircase of needs? Now, how does that one tear down Maslow's staircase of needs? Well, what happens is that we tend to get angry after a while. Let me give you an example. Say I've got a 4-year-old son, and I'm sitting here having coffee with a friend. We're visiting, having a good time, and my little son, maybe he wants attention. I don't know what he wants, but he starts getting up on the Davenport. Now, he knows that's a rule in our house. He's not supposed to be up on the Davenport. But he starts jumping on the Davenport. And I look over at him and say, Billy, please stop jumping on the Davenport. And I go back to my tea with my friend. He stops a little bit, and then he starts jumping again on the Davenport. And I say, Billy, jumps more on the Davenport, you know, when I'm not looking. And then he gets more and more higher jumps, and finally I'm getting angry, right? I'm getting really angry. And I finally, maybe the 3rd or 4th time, say, Billy, you stop jumping on that Davenport, or I'm going to come over there and get the spoon out. Many parents say they take the spoon and threaten their children with a wooden spoon that they're going to hit them with. And Billy finally gets off the Davenport, runs outside. I can't catch him. And I say to my friend, I don't know what it is that makes Billy so naughty. Well, what I've done, I've increased his negative behavior by procrastinating. And what's happened, we got into a power struggle about it because I got angrier and angrier, and the tone of my voice, of course, is telling him that I am the one in charge here and he better quit, but I'm not doing anything to really stop. I am just into yelling at him. And, you know, I don't know if I told you the story last week about the mother who married a man, and they each brought children into the family, and she overheard her daughter telling the new son, you don't have to pay attention to mother when she yells at you because she'll never do anything about it. And our children do learn that. So procrastination, the anger that comes, I don't know how many of you had that experience, that you put off actually going in there and doing anything about it, and you just talk about it. What happens, I think, with the adult is that our own staircase of needs gets pretty frayed. You know, our sense of being a competent parent, and children aren't minding us. We tend to get angry. And I think it helps, so anger will come up here all through the evening. Anger is tied in with a lot of power struggles. But the thing about anger, and I'd like to spend some time talking about anger before we go any further, anger is a secondary emotion. It helps to know that. When I first learned that, it was a opener for me to understand about feelings, that anger comes second, generally. And let me tell you how I learned it. this was after my children were grown. My husband and I were both working full time. We had an agreement that we took turns fixing dinner. He'd come home one night, fix dinner. I'd come home the next night and fix dinner. And it was my turn to come home and fix dinner that night. We were both very tired. We were both working in schools with children. We were both stressed out. It seemed like at that time in our life, like we didn't have any time for each other, that our relationship wasn't so hot. We were just working tired, you know, kind of a thing. And I came home that night, and George had gotten home first. He's given me permission to tell this story, by the way. He was sitting there reading the paper, and I looked over at him. I felt such a yearning to be close to him and intimate again that I went over to him, and I kind of tickled him, and I said, "Hi, George," and you know, I kind of knocked aside his paper and tickled him. Now, tickling is a very intrusive kind of a touching. I was paying attention to him at neutral times, but tickling really is demanding kind of touch, and it puts me in control. And he jerked away the paper. He says, "Leave me alone, Joanne." Well, would you care to guess my feelings? I felt, of course, I felt rejected. I felt rejected. And I had another feeling. I felt fear. The fear was that our relationship was disintegrating. Fear. I think maybe those were the two that I felt the strongest. But I did. I backed off. I went out in the kitchen and I started fixing whatever it was I was fixing. And as I remember standing by the sink, I was getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And I was going to go back into the living room and I was going to use an I statement and say, "I get really angry." And I thought, this is no good. It's just a blaming anger statement. And it dawned on me then what I'd been reading about. I had been reading about this. What did I feel first? And when I got in touch with these, I was feeling rejected and very fearful of our relationship. It seemed to hurt even more because I was in touch with those then. But I went back in the living room, sat down with him and said, "I've got to talk with you, George. I'm scared." And then the paper came down immediately. He said, "What's the matter, Joanne?" And I told him, our relationship seems to be not even here anymore, and I just feel like you don't care about me, all that stuff. And then for the first time, he was able to tell me what it was he felt. You know, it was a flare of anger he had toward me because I was so intrusive and demanding with my tickling. And he said, "I've been with kids all day, but people have been after me all day to do things for them, and I just wanted some peace and quiet, and you just didn't give it to me." And so when both of us were able to talk about that he had felt not respected actually and not cared for, those were his feelings. The anger just simply disintegrated. It wasn't there. But if we had had this big discussion about, I get so angry when you do this, and had focused on the anger, it would have lasted a long time, and we probably would have taken that anger back to school the next day. It would have come out in some ways with the people that we worked with. And the same things happens with our kids, you know, and these what we feel is anger flaring in the instance of the mother who's yelling at her little boy to stop jumping on the couch. Here she is in front of her friend. She feels not cared for, not respected by her son. She feels maybe incompetent as a parent. My kid doesn't even mind me. And all those things, then the anger comes as a flare. And the anger is how we really sabotage the relationship with our kids. Because when we flare with the anger, it tends to, again, then the child's getting all these feelings that we're throwing at him of not being cared for, you know, not belonging, not being unconditionally loved, not being respected as a person. And yet we've all done it, and we're all going to do it. It's a natural thing, but it's a natural thing because we don't always know what to do. But it helps to know, to see yourself, to observe yourself doing it, and it helps to diffuse the anger if you can just even get in touch with what the basic feelings are. And if you can just carry out corrections as a teaching process. This isn't personal. I mean, this child isn't doing anything personally humiliating to me because he won't get off the Davenport. I just need to start a teaching process here to stop it, instead of taking it so personal as we tend to do.